My name is Daniel. I'm writing this from room 614 of the Ashwood Grand Hotel in Nevada. I don't think I'm leaving. Let me start from the beginning. I'm a sales rep. I travel a lot. Hotels are my second home. I've slept in hundreds of them. Cheap motels, mid-range chains, fancy resorts. After a while, they all feel the same. The same stiff sheets, the same humming air conditioner. The same tiny shampoo bottles. You stop noticing things. But the Ashwood Grand was different. I found it on one of those last-minute booking apps. The price was suspiciously low, $49 for a night in what looked like a 4-star hotel. The photos showed marble floors, velvet curtains, golden elevator doors. I figured it was a mistake in the listing. I booked it before they could fix it. I arrived around 11 at night. The parking lot was almost empty. Just 3 cars, all covered in a thin layer of dust like they hadn't moved in days. The front entrance had 2 large glass doors, but only one opened. The other had a crack running down the center like a vein. Inside, the lobby was enormous. Cathedral ceilings, a chandelier, the size of a small car. But the lights were dimmed so low that everything had this golden brown haze to it, like an old photograph. There was music playing from somewhere, not speakers, but something deeper in the building. A piano. Slow, repetitive notes, the same 4 notes over and over. The front desk clerk was a thin woman with deep-set eyes and hair, pulled back so tight it stretched her face. She smiled when she saw me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. It never reached her eyes. "Checking in?" she asked. "Yes." "Daniel Whitmore, I have a reservation." She typed something into her computer. The screen reflected in her glasses green text on a black background. Not a modern system. Something old. Room 614. She saw 6th floor. End of the hallway. She handed me a brass key. Not a key card. An actual brass key, heavy and cold. "The elevator is around the corner," she said, "but I recommend the stairs." "Why?" I asked. She just smiled again. That same empty smile. I took the elevator anyway. It was one of those old ones with the accordion gate you pull shut manually. It rattled and groaned as it climbed. Between the 3rd and 4th floors, it stopped for about 10 seconds. The lights flickered. I heard something above me, not mechanical. It sounded like breathing. Deep, slow breathing. Then the elevator moved again. The 6th floor hallway was long, unusually long. The carpet was dark red with gold patterns, and the walls were lined with identical wooden doors. No sound came from any of them. No TV noise. No talking. No footsteps. Just the buzz of the fluorescent lights above, half of which were dead or flickering. Room 614 was at the very end. The last door. The hallway seemed to narrow as I walked toward it, like the walls were leaning in. I know that sounds crazy, but the feeling was undeniable. By the time I reached my door, it felt like standing at the bottom of a funnel. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was large, much larger than expected. A king bed with a dark red comforter, heavy curtains covering the window. A writing desk, a bathroom with black and white tile. Everything was clean but old. The kind of old where you can feel the decades pressed into the walls. I set my bag down and sat on the bed. That's when I noticed the mirror. It was mounted on the wall across from the bed. A large, rectangular mirror in an ornate gold frame, but something about it was wrong. The reflection was slightly delayed. I moved my hand, and for just a fraction of a second, the reflection lagged behind. I told myself it was exhaustion. I told myself I was seeing things. I got ready for bed. Brushed my teeth, changed clothes, turned off the lights. The room went dark except for a thin line of light under the door from the hallway. I couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I heard it. A knock on the door. 3 slow knocks. I lay still. Probably a drunk guest with the wrong room. I waited. Silence. Then, 3 more knocks. Same rhythm. Same pace. I got up, and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, but the carpet directly in front of my door was wet. A small, dark stain, like someone had been standing there with soaking shoes. I went back to bed. At 2:33 a.m., the phone rang. The room phone on the nightstand. Primera picked it up. Silence. Then breathing. Dat same. Deep, slow breathing from the elevator. Hello, I sold. A voice whispered. It was faint, broken, like it was coming from very far away. Don't look. In the mirror, at night, the line went dead. My eyes went straight to the mirror. In the darkness, I could barely see my reflection, but I could see enough. I was sitting up in bed. My reflection was sitting up in bed, but my reflection's head was tilted at an angle that mine was not. I turned on the light. The reflection was normal. Perfect sync. I stared at it for a long time. Nothing. I told myself it was a trick of the dark. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, I went to the front desk to complain about the phone call. A different clerk was there, a young man with a blank expression. There's no phone system connected to the rooms, he said. Those phones haven't worked in years. I told him the phone in my room rang at 2:33 a.m. He stared at me for a long moment. Room 614? He asked. Yes. He looked down. His hands were shaking. You should check out. Why? A list of names, and he didn't answer. He just seed a piece of paper across the counter. It was a printout date. Guests who had stayed in room 614. The last 12 entries all had the same checkout date. None. The column was blank. 12 guests over the past 4 years who checked in and never checked out. I laughed, nervously. What is this? Some kind of joke to scare guests? He looked up at me. His eyes were red. I'm not trying to scare you, sir. I'm trying to help you. I went back to my room to pack, but when I opened the door, my bag was already packed, sitting neatly by the door. My clothes folded perfectly inside, my toothbrush dry and placed in its case. Everything arranged the way I would do it, but I hadn't done it. I grabbed the bag and turned to leave. That's when I saw the mirror again. My reflection was standing in the middle of the room, but I was at the door. My reflection was smiling. I ran down the hallway. It felt longer than before. The doors on either side seemed to multiply. I could hear something behind me, not footsteps, but a dragging sound. Slow and wet. I reached the elevator, pressed the button. The dragging sound was getting closer. The elevator opened. I got in, hit the lobby button. The doors closed. Between the 4th and 3rd floors, the elevator stopped again. The lights went out. In the darkness of the elevator, I could see my reflection in the polished metal doors. It was standing right behind me. The lights came back on. I was alone. I made it to the lobby. I ran past the front desk. The young clerk watched me go. He didn't say a word. I pushed through the glass door and stepped into the parking lot. My car was covered in dust, like it had been sitting there for weeks. My phone showed the correct date. I had only been there one night, but my phone also showed 47 missed calls from my wife, all from different days. I drove away. I didn't look back, but sometimes, late at night in other hotels, I catch my reflection in the bathroom mirror, and for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, it doesn't move when I do. I stopped looking in mirrors after dark. Some rooms don't just hold guests, some rooms keep them. I don't tell this story often. People don't believe it, but it happened. Every devil, I haven't been the same since. My name is Claudia Reyes. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. 2 years ago, I took a solo trip to a small town near the border for a photography project. Desert architecture, abandoned buildings, that kind of thing. I needed a place to sleep, so I booked a room at a place called the Coronado Inn. The Coronado was old. Built in the 1940s, maybe earlier. 3 stories, adobe walls, a courtyard with a dried-up fountain in the center. The kind of place that was probably beautiful once, but had been slowly eaten alive by time and heat. The paint was peeling. The wooden beams above the entrance were cracked and splitting, but the sign still glowed in neon red. Coronado. INN. I checked in around 8 p.m. The woman at the desk was maybe 60. She wore a turquoise necklace and had silver hair pulled into a loose braid. She was friendly, but there was something careful about the way she spoke. Like she was choosing each word with precision. "First time here?" she asked. "Yes," I said. She paused, looked at me for a long second. Then she said, "Are you sure?" I laughed. "Pretty sure. I've never been to this town before." She nodded slowly and handed me a key. Room 208. Second floor. The hallways of the Coronado were narrow and dim. The walls were lined with framed black and white photographs guests from decades past. Men in suits, women in old dresses, children with serious faces. I stopped to look at a few of them. They were fascinating, frozen moments from another era. Then I stopped cold. One of the photographs, dated 1953, showed a woman sitting on the edge of a bed in what looked like one of the hotel rooms. She had dark hair, high cheekbones, a mole on her left cheek. She looked exactly like me. Not similar, not resembling. Exactly like me Tasami face. The same posture, the same way I tilt my head slightly to the left when I'm being photographed. My hands started trembling. I leaned closer. The nameplate under the photo read, C. Reyes room, 208. September 1953. My name is Claudia Reyes. I was booked in room 208, and that photograph was taken 70 years ago. I told myself it was a coincidence. Reyes is a common name. Faces repeat across generations. I forced myself to walk to my room. Room 208 was simple. A bed, a nightstand, a small window overlooking the courtyard, a wooden closet with a sliding door. The walls were white, but yellowed with age. There was a smell faint, sweet, like dried flowers, almost pleasant, but something underneath it. Something sour. I unpacked my camera and sat on the bed. That's when I noticed the scratches on the inside of the closet door. I opened it. The closet was empty, but the inside of the door was covered in scratches. Deep, frantic scratches in the wood, and at the bottom, carved with something sharp, were words. "She comes back. She always comes back." My stomach dropped. I closed the closet door. I told myself it was old vandalism. Some bored or disturbed guest from years ago. I went to bed early. Exhaustion pulled me under fast, but I woke up at exactly 3 a.m. I know, because the clock on the nightstand was glowing red. 3 o'clock. And the room was different. The furniture was in the same place. The bed was the same. But everything looked newer. The walls were bright white. The curtains were a deep green instead of faded brown. The window was open, and warm asked follow-up. Desert air was blowing in. The dried-up fountain in the courtyard below was running. I could hear the water. I got out of bed and looked in the mirror above the dresser. I was wearing a nightgown. A white cotton nightgown I had never owned. My hair was styled differently, pinned back with small clips. I touched my face. It was my face, but the reflection felt like it belonged to someone else. There was a knock at the door. I opened it. The hallway was bright, wallpaper with small floral patterns. A woman stood outside, a mauled, in a gray uniform with a white apron. She looked at me and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Miss Reyes. Breakfast is being served in the courtyard." "What year is it?" I asked. My voice shook. She gave me a puzzled look. 1953. Ma'am. September 14th? I closed the door. I pressed my back against it. My heart was hammering so hard I can feel it in my teeth. This was a dream. It had to be. I shut my eyes and pressed my palms against my face. I counted to 10. When I opened my eyes, the room was old again. Faded curtains, cracked walls, dead silence. 3:01 a.m. 1 minute had passed. I didn't sleep again. I sat in the corner of the room with every light on, watching the closet door. I kept thinking about the scratches. She comes back. She always comes back. In the morning, I went downstairs. The silver-haired woman was at the desk again. "I need to ask you about room 208, I said. She looked at me like she had been waiting for this. "You saw it, didn't you?" she said quietly. "Saw what?" "The other time. The room takes you there. It always takes the ones who belong to it." I showed her the photograph on the wall, the woman from 1953. She looked at it, then looked at me. That woman checked in on September 14th, 1953. She never checked out. They found the room empty the next morning. Her belongings were still there. Her shoes by the bed, her suitcase packed. But she was gone. And the name, I whispered, "C. Reyes. Claudia Reyes. From Tucson." My legs almost gave out. "That's my name," I sold. "That's where I'm from." The old woman nodded. "I know. That's why I asked if it was your first time." I demanded answers. She told me what she knew. Room 208 has a history. Every few years, a woman checks in. She always has the same face. The Samanama, the same origin. She stays one night, and some of them disappear, vanish, as if the room swallowed them whole. Others leave in the morning, terrified but alive. "What's the difference?" I asked. "Between the ones who leave and the ones who don't." The old woman leaned closer. "The ones who leave don't open the closet door a second time." My blood turned to ice. I had opened it once. I had read the scratches, but I hadn't opened it again. Not yet. "What's in the closet?" I asked. "Nothing," she said, "but when you open it the second time, the room thinks you're staying." I packed my things in under 2 minutes. I didn't go back to the second floor. I left the key on the desk and walked to my car. As I pulled out of the lot, I looked up at the second floor. The window of room 208 was open, and someone was standing there. A woman with dark hair and high cheekbones. She was waving at me. She was wearing the white nightgown. She had my face. I drove for 4 hours straight without stopping. I deleted the booking app. I burned the one photograph I had taken inside the room, but it didn't matter. Because last week, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a photographed black and white. It showed me sitting on the edge of the bed in room 208. The style, the grain of the photo, it looked like it was taken in 1953. On the back, written in handwriting that looked exactly like mine. "See you soon, room 208. It's waiting. I haven't slept since." Let me be clear about something before I start. I am not a paranoid person. I am not superstitious. I have a degree in electrical engineering. I work in data systems. I believe in logic, in wiring, in things that can be measured. But what happened to me at the Bellman Hotel in northern Montana cannot be measured. It can only be survived. My name is Aaron Kirsch. I was sent to the Belmont for a 4-day work conference in November. The hotel was old, but recently renovated, a 7-story building with a mix of original architecture and modern upgrades. Nice lobby, good restaurant. Standard stuff. I checked in on a Monday evening and was given a room on the 5th floor, room 512. Everything was normal. The first 2 days were completely unremarkable. Meetings, dinners, bad coffee, the usual. It was the third night that changed everything. I came back to my room around 11:30 p.m. I stepped into the elevator and pressed 5. The elevator moved, but between floors 4 and 5, it stopped. Not a sudden jolt, a slow, smooth stop, like it had arrived at a destination. The panel above the door showed no number. The light between 4 and 5 was simply gone. Blank. Then the doors opened. There was a hallway that should not have existed. It was between the 4th and 5th floors. The ceiling was low, maybe 6.5 feet. The carpet was gray. Not patterned, just flat, colorless gray. The walls were concrete, unpainted. Fluorescent lights ran along the ceiling, but they gave off a faint blue-white glow that made everything look clinical. Sterile, like a hospital ward that had been abandoned mid-construction. There were doors, 6 of them. 3 on each side. They had no numbers. No handles. Just flat, featureless surfaces with small rectangular windows at eye level, like observation panels. I should have pressed the closed door button. I should have hit 5 and waited, but I didn't. Something about that hallway pulled at me, not curiosity. Something deeper, a compulsion, like the hallway had been waiting for me specifically and I owed it my attention. I stepped out. The elevator doors closed behind me. I turned around and pressed the button. Nothing happened. The button didn't even light up. The air was cold. Not winter, cold, clinical cold. Refrigerated. My breath didn't fog, but I could feel the chill deep in my lungs. The silence was absolute. Not quiet, absolute. No hum of electricity. No building noise. No air circulation. Just nothing. I walked to the first door on the left. I looked through the small window. Inside was a room. A hotel room. But wrong. The furniture was arranged in a circle. Bed, desk, chair, nightstand all, facing the center of the room. In the center of the circle, on the floor, was a television. It was on. Static. The blue glow of the static filled the room. And sitting on the bed, facing the television, was a man. He was completely still. His hands were on his knees. His back was straight. His eyes were wide open and unblinking. He didn't move. Not even a breath that I could see. He looked like he had been sitting there for a very long time. I tapped on the glass. He didn't respond. I tapped harder. Nothing. He just stared at the static. I moved to the next door, looked through the window. This room was empty, completely empty. No furniture, no carpet, just bare concrete walls and floor. But in the far corner, near the ceiling, there was a shadow. Not cast by anything, just a dark shape pressed into the corner, about the size of a person curled into a ball. As I watched, it moved, slowly. It unfolded slightly, like something stretching after a long sleep. Then it stopped. I pulled away from the window. The third door. I almost didn't look, but I did. This room had a bed. On the bed was a woman. She was lying on her back, eyes closed, hands folded on her chest. She looked peaceful, like she was sleeping. But on the nightstand next to her was a framed photograph. I squinted to see it. The photograph was of me, not someone who looked like me. Me. The shirt I was wearing that day. My conference badge hanging from my neck, my exact face. The photo had been taken from the perspective of someone standing at the foot of the bed, my bed, in room 512. I recognized the curtains, the headboard, the position of the lamp. Someone or something had taken a photograph of me while I slept and placed it in this impossible room between floors. I backed away from the door. My hands were shaking. The hallway felt shorter now, like the walls had moved closer. The lights above me flickered once. In that half-second of darkness, I heard something, a whisper, not from any direction. From everywhere at once, inside the walls, inside the air, inside my own head. It said, "You're already here." The lights came back on. At the far end of the hallway, where there had been a blank wall before, there was now a 7th door. This one was different. It had a handle and a number plate. Room 5122. My room was 512. This was 12 and a half. A room that existed in the space between spaces. A half room. For a half floor in a hotel that shouldn't have either. I didn't touch it. Every instinct I had screamed at me not to open that door. I could feel something behind it. Not here, Italiano. Feel it. A presence, dense and heavy and aware. It knew I was standing there. It was waiting for me to make a choice. I turned and ran back to the elevator. I slammed the button. Nothing. I pressed it again and again. The lights flickered. The whisper came back. Louder now, overlapping with itself like dozens of voices saying the same thing at slightly different times. You're already here. You're already here. You're already here! Then the elevator dinged. The doors opened. I threw myself inside and hit the button for the lobby.